Now let's talk more about the president's renewed threats to send armed troops to the border with Ash Wright, political advisor to George P. Bush and former political director for the GOP of Texas, and Spencer Critchley, Democratic strategist and former communications advisor for Barack Obama's presidential campaign. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Ash, I want to start with you. What do you make of the president's doubling down about sending more armed soldiers to the border?
Sure. Well, I think this is actually something that's been in the works for a while, long before the April 13th confrontation happened between the CBP officers and the Mexican soldiers. And so, it's been long known that the Department of Homeland Security was going to ask the Pentagon to send 300 to 500 more troops to the U.S. border. Those troops are primarily going to be down there to assist the CBP. And that's because if you look at apprehensions this year of illegal immigrants coming into the U.S., it's already over 414,000. Last fiscal year, it was roughly under 400,000. And so it's basically double where it was last year. We obviously did not double the amount of Custom and Border Patrol agents down there. And so they're there to help the CBP. And I think he's referencing a request for more soldiers that's been in the works for several months.
Spencer, let's get to you now. The president says that Mexico is not doing nearly enough in apprehending and returning migrants, yet you had 400 or so just apprehended by Mexican police just a few weeks ago. The president complimented Mexico for making inroads. So what's changed?
I think what's changed is the Mueller report and people getting a chance to read it and realize just how very seriously damaging it is to the president. The president claims that the incident between the Mexican and U.S. forces, I hesitate almost even to call it an incident. It just seems to be a simple misunderstanding that was resolved amicably. But he claims it may have been a diversion for drug smuggling without any evidence offered at all, of course. And I think the only diversion here is a diversion from the Mueller report. And unfortunately, this is standard operating procedure for this president, who is constantly creating very dramatic distractions when he thinks the news is going against him, which unfortunately happens weekly.
Ash, I want you to jump in there. Do you think this has anything at all to do with the Mueller report?
I don't think it has anything to do with the Mueller report. I will agree that I don't think that it was fair that the president of the United States, speak in an accusation saying that this was essentially some sort of cover up to get drugs across. In our war against opioids and our war against drugs, the part of Mexico playing a part in that war is very significant. It's a vital piece of that. They have to protect their side of the border. We have to protect ours. And so I think that moving forward, it would help if we weren't speaking in accusations and emotions and we were speaking with facts and figures. And I do think there's a major problem and we need to deal with it, but we shouldn't make any accusations in any way, especially coming out of the White House.
Just a few moments ago, we just heard the president talking about 400 miles of border wall being built by the end of next year. And he said that he feels that will help in terms of stemming the flow of illegal drugs into the United States. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, look, I think if you look at parts of Texas, including where the incident roughly just happened, the border wall is helping. There are portions in South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, Harlingen County, et cetera, where the flow of drugs is very significant. If you look at Clint, Texas, which is where the incident just happened, the flow of Texas there is significantly less. If you look at the border wall, it's typically, so the Rio Grande River is actually where the border per se is, but the border wall sits several yards, in some cases, 100 yards off of that river, which is where the incident happened. But typically beyond the wall, there is a hard stop flow of drugs, and the drugs are coming across at border crossings where there is no wall. And so I do think it's needed, and I think that we should take a stance of doing anything to help stop the flow of drugs.
Ash, I want Spencer to jump in here. Spencer, what do you think about that question regarding whether or not the wall will have any kind of real impact here?
Well, first of all, I want to wholeheartedly agree with Ash that we need to remove these kinds of emotional back and forths over such serious issues. So I'm really glad to hear that. You know, I think that walls can work. That's why we do have barriers along the border, but they have to work as part of a smart system. And another unfortunate hallmark of the Trump administration is the constant offering of simple answers to complex questions. Now, we all wish that complex questions had simple answers, but usually those answers are wrong. So yes, it makes sense to have barriers where those barriers are going to help, and they need to be augmented by sensors and drones and video cameras and personnel, which is the approach that people have taken in the past. So the wall by itself is not necessarily going to be any help at all, and the original vision of the entire border being walled off in what would essentially be an embarrassing monument to fear, supposedly paid for by Mexico, was of course not going to work, but a sensible approach to a systemic solution, which should also, by the way, include, I think as Ash suggests, international relations. We need to have strong relations with Mexico. We need to look at where we can help Central American countries and Mexico to stem this tide of asylum seekers, and all of those things need to work together.
Very quickly, a quick answer on this question for both of you. Yesterday, the House asked a court to block border wall construction before it begins in earnest. Do you think that that will be granted? Start with you, Spencer.
Well, I try to avoid making predictions like that. You know, this whole border wall construction thing is so spongy. President Trump claims it's already under construction, even while he's railing about it not being under construction. And when he points to these examples, it's actually just repairs of existing wall.
And Ash, just a very quick yes or no. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't think it'll pass. I mean, there's a long history of border walls being built by multiple presidents going all the way back to Bill Clinton. I don't think it'll pass, and I think he'll eventually get his border wall.
All right, Ash Wright and Spencer Critchley, we thank you so much both for your time.